Today we'll reveal the reason why Japanese green tea is a lot more healthier than other types of green tea. Hi, I'm Yuki. I'm the founder of Tea Life. Here we break down Japanese green tea to make your next cup of tea more fun. Now, Japanese green tea is extremely famous for being super healthy. So for example, when you look at the top 10 leading causes of death in the United States, 8 of them can actually be significantly reduced by the regular consumption of Japanese green tea, which is incredible. This includes things like heart disease, stroke, COPD, dementia, diabetes, certain types of cancer, right? So it's an extremely healthy drink. But let me ask you, how could it possibly be that Japanese green tea is so much different, so much healthier than other types of tea? After all, if it's a tea, it's all under the same Camellia sinensis tea plant, and that's the tea plant that makes all the types of tea. That includes green tea, but also oolong tea, black tea, white tea, pu'er tea, so on and so forth. And this exact same tea plant is grown in lots of different areas in the world, including China, Vietnam, Thai, India, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Korea, so on and so forth. So it's very perplexing that Japanese green tea stands out as something extremely healthy. This is especially true when you come to think of it. Japanese green tea itself is imported from China relatively recently. When I say relatively recent, I'm talking about the 12th to 13th century, so a while back. But still, in the context of the evolution of the whole world, it's relatively recent, right? So it's very fascinating in that sense. Before we talk about what the difference is between Japanese green tea and the other types of green tea, I want to first talk about what's behind the health benefit. Why is it so healthy? Right? And there's a compound in Japanese green tea that is responsible for most of the health benefits. I want to say 80% of the health benefits of green tea. And it's a compound called EGCG. EGCG. EGCG is short for epigallocatechin gallate, and that's a very long name, so you don't have to remember that one. But I advise you to take note of EGCG because it's such an important compound. Now, when you hear about green tea and its health benefits and why it's so healthy, you might hear different words such as they have green tea catechins or polyphenols or antioxidants. And in the context of Japanese green tea, when you hear any of these words, basically, you're talking about EGCG. So EGCG is a type of green tea catechin. It's one of the 4 prominent types of green tea catechin in Japanese green tea, which is a type of polyphenol, which is a powerful antioxidant. So again, we're basically talking about the same thing. And the interesting thing about EGCG is that it's extremely powerful in terms of health benefit. However, it's extremely rare outside of green tea. It doesn't really exist in meaningful amounts in anywhere else. And it's most prominent in Japanese green tea. Now, what is the reason why Japanese green tea has such a high amount of EGCG compared to other types of tea? And to me, this is very fascinating because it kind of boils down to the manufacturing process of how it goes through. And especially it goes to the fixation process of the tea. Now, what's the fixation process? It's a way to stop the oxidation from happening. What's oxidation? Oxidation is when something changes due to oxygen. So if you have a banana, if it turns brown, that's oxidation. If you have an avocado, it turns brown, that's also oxidation. Green tea will turn brown as well. And that's why you don't have tea farms picking tea leaves and then stuffing it in a bag and selling it to the market right away. You have to go through a fixation process to fix the oxidation, stop the oxidation before you start selling the tea. And that's what this fixation process is. Usually, fixation process will be done by heat. The way that Japan evolved was it was completely dominantly a steaming process, which is actually quite unique when you look at the other countries. So the steaming process, it turns out that EGCG is preserved better through the steaming process compared to like a frying process. And that's why Japanese green tea compared to other types of green tea has higher amounts of EGCG. Now, the other part of this is that EGCG is a very fragile compound. So if you go through any kind of oxidation, it will also reduce the amount of EGCG left in the green tea. So depending on the color of the tea, there would be different types of oxidation levels. So green tea is a tea that's fixed right after harvesting, so that's zero oxidation. If you let it wait a little bit, there's yellow tea in China, which is a slightly oxidized tea, but that, so a slight oxidation will reduce the amount of EGCG. Oolong tea is half oxidized, and black tea and red tea, same thing, would be completely oxidized. So these are different levels of oxidation, and as the levels of oxidation increase, the level of EGCG will decrease. So by those concepts, the Japanese green tea is extremely high in EGCG because, first of all, it's not oxidized. And second of all, the fixing process goes through a steaming process, which does not damage the EGCG as much as the other fixing processes. And that's why, again, we have high EGCG amounts in Japanese green tea. The interesting part is, why did it evolve this way? Why did Japanese green tea or Japanese tea evolve in such a way that's so different from the other countries? And that's been very fascinating to me. I think the reason why was the way the Japanese people appreciated tea, how it spread was very different from other countries. And back then, when they imported tea from China, it was a man called Eisai in the 12th to 13th century, and this was in the Song Dynasty of China. So in that era, and back then, China was like way ahead of Japan. So from the Japanese people's standpoint, it's coming from like almost like an alien world. And Eisai brought this tea plant, and first he brought it so they brought it as a disciplinary thing. It wasn't like a entertainment or fun kind of thing that we have today. It was something to prevent him from sleeping during his chanting, because they chant in the temple, which is, to me, is kind of hilarious. But that's how it happened, and that's how it spread. And so it was more of a disciplinary lifestyle kind of thing more than anything. And the next part it spread to was to the samurais, to the bushis or the samurais, and they required some kind of tea to stay sharp as well, because it was a era of turmoil and an era of war as well. So rather than kind of going for the tea, it was really a drink to kind of keep them awake, keep them on their toes. And back then there was no technology like shading or anything, so the ground tea back then was, I think, very bitter. I think it would be very disgusting, but it kept them on their toes. It kept them awake, and it gave them that lifestyle that they required back then. And I think that's kind of how Japanese green tea evolved, and that's why it's so different from the other countries as well. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you like that one, you might like the next one as well. So make sure you find another cup of Japanese green tea and click on the next link.